great way for a delighted John Cleland to start the new season. Second on the grid, first in the race. That'll do nicely. Another 18 left, and will Rydell bog down in the Volvo again? We'll soon know. And the answer is no.
We need to work harder. It's not good enough. 2 engines and 2 races. Not acceptable. The team must push harder. Today, my radar engines must stop blowing up. I'm trying to build a championship.
John Cleland is sandwiched between the 2 BMWs and going for first, says John Cleland. Oh, Matt Neal sideways, championship leader, entering trouble sideways, he gets it back again. It's Plato and Matt Neal, side by side.
I'm going to rip your face off. You know what that? I'm going to rip your Hey! What are we doing here? Is this stock car racing or is this motorsport? The man's an animal.
And Colin Turkington is going to become the champion for the 3rd time in his career with 1 race to stand.
Hi again, everyone. Welcome to a brand new, very, very special episode of Reverse Grid podcast. And I say this about every podcast I do because everyone I do is special, but this one really ushers in a brand new era of Reverse Grid. So in the room with me today is not just a special guest, he's going to be my co-driver, if we're going to use a racing term there. My new co-host, Lee Tilston. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris.
Your new
You okay?
home. Yeah, good. Thank you, mate. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. I'm really, really looking forward to what we can do with it. So, yeah. You're in the room, sir. You're in the room.
That's it. Looking forward to doing these shows, mate. It's it's an idea that I've wanted to do for a while, and I've always had the ideas of how I'd like to put it out there and what I'd like to discuss and what I'd like to cover, but and didn't really have the know-how to get it off the ground. You'd already done that and wanted someone to sort of come on board and help out. So it's a perfect coming together of 2 minds, isn't it? So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, and I think it should. Anyone who sort of hasn't been who isn't in the know, will bring you to a bit more up to speed on the reasons why we decided to do this. Anyone who's followed this before, since I launched it last year, I've only done sort of 10 or 11 episodes. It was always my aim to have something like this as more of a discussion show. And whereas, I brought people in for interviews and that, it was always what I wanted to do was I wanted to have something regular where I'm not just talking to myself. And I didn't have the perfect person to do it with. And then lo and behold, I see yourself post the perfect message in one of the groups that we're in together, that you wanted to get involved and even start your own podcast. It just felt right. It's like, okay, you've got exactly the same mind. You want to do the same things. A bit of a mix of current stuff. We can go back in time, and we'll delve into some of the iconic events, happenings, drivers, cars, whatever it is. We'll always find something to talk about. We're looking at doing this fortnightly, and then we're going to see how we go. From there.
I think we've said, haven't we? We'd like to put live videos out eventually, maybe with a target of being the start of next season, where we can put these videos out live, and then we can have an audience, fellow BTCC fans then wading in to the debate or this discussion as it's going on, and throwing out ideas and different opinions on stuff. So let's keep getting those viewing figures and listening figures up, and once we've got a decent following, we can start doing these live shows. And I think we've said as well, we'd like to get other supporters involved as well, and have other people's opinions and stories and things like that, and but just a real place where fans can sort of come together and discuss the present, a bit of a BTCC community, because there is so much to discuss. There's always there's always something happening now, as we've seen even in this break, and there's such a pool of stuff that's gone on in the past, and so many different eras that there's so much to cover. So I'm looking forward to it.
We'll never run out of material.
We won't run out of material, that's for sure.
And Lee, bless you, you've already started to kind of broaden the horizons. So got our own Facebook page.
Yep.
Thanks to you. So thank you for that. Anyone who wants to check it out, search on Facebook for Reverse Grid Podcast, the unofficial BTCC podcast, or Reverse Grid, the unofficial BTCC podcast. You shouldn't find any others out there with that name. I'm fairly confident. Thank you for that. It's somewhere again that can draw some eyes to what we're trying to do here and what we're celebrating, the magic of the BTCC. So that's good. We'll also have our own dedicated YouTube channel, which is now up and running. If you're on YouTube and you just pop in at Reverse Grid Podcast, you will find the new channel. Please hop on there and subscribe. This is where all the new episodes are going to be going. You can see links on there as well. I have linked the old episodes that I put on my own YouTube channel. But say this is like, it's a rebirth. I think I said that in one of the other episodes I've done recently when I wanted to relaunch this year. This really is a rebirth of this podcast. We're going to do exactly what the vision we both have, and finally coming together. So let's get to know you a little bit more, and let's get to know each other a little bit more, I suppose. So you yourself, your love affair with BTCC, let's start there. When did that start? Who was it? Where was it?
It was 1995. Me dad took us to Alton Park. He does like to remind me that he took us to Alton Park in about 1987, 88 to watch the touring cars, but all me and my brother wanted to do was play in the sand. So he didn't bother taking us for a while. And then 95, he took us to Alton Park, the May meeting, and Rickard Rydell won the first race. So I was a Rydell fan from that moment on. We had a Volvo at the time, so we were doing this little game where we had to pick a driver who was going to win every race, and just to get some bragging rights. And because we had a Volvo, I said, "Oh, Rickard Rydell," and he happened to win. So that was it. I was a Rydell fan from the off. Although I wasn't a massive touring car fan straight away. It was we went to that May meeting, we went to the September meeting where John Cleland won it. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until the following year when we went to the 96 May meeting that we really got the bug. We saw Kelvin Burt had a huge crash in front of us at Cascades,
right?
And that was and the next week it was like, right, we've got to tune into Grandstand. We can watch it, and from that moment on, that was it. We had the video. The video was set every week after to follow it. We'd be on CFAX to find out the results, because that's what you had to do back in those days.
Yeah, the magic of
and you'd get you'd find a shock result or something, and you wouldn't have a clue what had happened. So you'd be chomping at the bit for the weekend to come to see exactly what happened. So so that was it really. So sort of 95, 96, and from 95. We didn't miss a meeting at Alton Park for touring cars until 2017.
Okay.
So a long time, and that was only because my son had just been born a few weeks before. So
they do get in the way a bit, don't they?
They do a bit. They do a bit. They're worth it, but So kind of followed it from afar. Really, didn't go from that point on. Didn't go for a couple of years until we were planning to go back on 2020, and obviously COVID stopped that. But from 2021, been going again ever since. Try and go to as many meetings as we can. Really, I love to go to different meetings.
Yeah.
So
different circuits. Which is your local circuit then?
Alton Park's our local one. Yeah. So that's only sort of 20 minutes away. So it was always Alton Park, and then. Trying to think what the first other meeting that we did was probably Snetterton 2001, the night race.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that was a brilliant meeting again. And again, we over the years we've not actually seen that many crashes.
No.
So we saw the Kelvin Burr one really early, and then we saw the Dan Eves crash in that night race. It's one of the most violent crashes that I think that
I
been in
don't think
touring
I've
cars.
seen a lot from that one. I need that's one of the years. I mean, I'm kind of
Yeah.
going back at the moment and it's trying to
Yeah.
find all these years that I didn't watch it and I haven't got there.
Well,
yet.
I loved that 2001 season. I know it's a bit. There wasn't many sort of the A class cars in there that year, but it was a brilliant season. And Phil Bennett was one of my favourite drivers that year.
Okay.
And
Was that the year Plato won it?
yeah, it was. Yeah, him and Muller had their famous
ding
spat,
dong,
and you had Thompson and Bennett in the export cars, and Bennett was on pole, so it was like he's going to win. This is going to be his first win because he'd been getting better and better, and he took the lead, and then Plato swiped him out of the lead, and they had that big argument, and yeah, so that was the first time we went to one other than Alton Park, and been to almost all of them now. There's not many that we've not been to. Knockhill and Silverstone, I think, are the only two.
Okay.
Went to Rockingham when that was going, and off to Croft this weekend. So I've been to Croft a few times.
And we'll come to that. I'm going to get your take on. We'll have a discussion about what we think is going to happen this weekend. Finally, it is coming back. It's been a long. We barely see in the summer. If you look outside your window, you wouldn't think it's summer. It's felt like it's a long summer since they've taken this break. It's
Well, we went to the Super Touring event at Brands Hatch a few weeks ago, which was the first time I'd been to Brands, and that's kind of it's acted as a bit of a sweetener to with the gap, but it still felt like a heck of it. It's felt a lot longer than normal this break.
It has. It really has. There've been. I will say though, maybe it's because I've been reporting on it a bit more. Cause what else I do? I now write for write about BTCC as well. So I've actually been looking at everything that's been happening. Whereas before, I think it's very easy to step away from it during this break and wait for it to come back. And I think I've just been taking more notice. It has been quite an active little break. Super touring event. Let's just touch on that for a second. Get your take on that, because I was kind of watching from afar and I was seeing all these people post about how fantastic it was and the cars that were there and the action. And what was it like for you?
It was brilliant. It really was, because when you're a teenager and you're seeing all these cars and these drivers, you don't really appreciate it. You love it. And I was touring car mad as in my teens, but you sort of take it for granted, don't you? It's only when you start getting a little bit older and you start looking back and you're thinking, God, it's 15 years ago now since that 97 season, or what. You start getting a bit misty eyed, and you never think you'll see those cars again. And then lo and behold, there's this meeting, and you've got thousands of other nerdy people doing exactly the same thing, and me little boys putting like, Dad, why are you taking 20 pictures of that yellow and blue car over there? I'm
because
we've got
Alan Menu's Laguna. Was it that one?
It was, yeah. It was it was an amazing weekend. It was great to see some of the old drivers and some of the cars which had been sort of just before my time as well. So we never got to see, like the Renault 19 was there, and Joe Winkelhock's BMW was there. So I know you like the Ford Sierra Cosworths, and there was quite a few of those there, and they were very impressive. Yeah, but it was just fantastic. And they're doing it again next year now. And
I know. I've got to be there, to be honest.
I would honestly, I would really recommend it to anybody listening. I decided to go on the Thursday night, because we were a bit cash strapped at the time, and I'd been doing a bit of overtime, and I kept listening to it and seeing it popping up, and every day Brands Hatch would be posting, this driver's going to be there, that car's going to be there, and eventually they just wore me down. I think on the Thursday night I thought, right, that's it, we're going. We just went out, brought a tent, a cheap tent, went down, they got the tickets, got there, and so glad that I did. So yeah, anybody that missed out this year, 100% worth it. And Brands Hatch as well, a fantastic track, got to say.
I've not been there, or at least
brilliant.
I can't remember going there. A bit like you said about how your dad mentioned that he took you to some of the other meets in like the late 80s and stuff. I had the same thing for my dad. So I remember watching the Saloon Car Championship. I'm pretty sure still was then, when it was part of the support of the British Grand Prix. So it was on TV when the British Grand Prix was on. I remember watching that a couple of years and seeing these cars, and I immediately, I was obsessed with cars when I was a kid, and I think it was the fact that I knew what they were. You see them out on the road, and all of a sudden they're racing around the track. He said to me recently that he did take me to, as a family, we went to some of the old Saloon Car Championship rounds. So it shows you how old it was, you know, how long ago it was. I can't remember it at all, and I don't know where I went. I took my kids and my wife to Thruxton for the first time. The first time any of us have seen BTCC that was
last season. Yeah, that was last season, wasn't it? Yeah.
So it's taken me that long to get there, but that's Thruxton is the only place that I've gone to see it that I remember, and it just really intrigues me. It's like, what meeting was I at? Where was it? What happened? Who was racing? You know, I've never been able to find that out yet.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, when my dad says, he said, I can't remember that exactly. He did tell me the exact year. It was either 87 or 88. And so you start thinking, in 88, Andy Rouse probably would have been racing then. Steve Soper would have been racing. And Steve Soper is one of my absolute heroes. You know, I was again, a driver that I just missed out on in 95 and I never thought I'd see him race again. And then he popped up in 2001 and I was made up. And he was at the Super Touring event the other week, and they say don't meet your heroes. Well, I'd already met him, but I said to me, son, Steve Soper's over there. You've got to go and meet him. He's the guy who clashed with John Cleland, who Cleland called an animal. I said, you know, go over and get his autograph. So we went over there, and he was such a nice guy. He was he was like, what's your name? And he wrote, to Charlie, best regards, Steve. And he was like, would you like to sit in the in this car? So he sat my son in the Sierra. And he was able to have a picture in there. He was just a really nice guy. And
that's amazing.
You know, when you meet these guys, and I mean, I'm not the chattiest of people when I meet the drivers. I tend to just keep my head down and have a photo and move on. But such a really nice guy to speak to, and it's brilliant.
So I have heard, now how true it is or not, I don't know. John Cleland wasn't available for this one, but it sounds like he was intended to be part of it. Now I'm hoping, because it was such a success and they've already announced next year's, I'm hoping he would be one that would be there, because he was looking back. You know, I'm a Jason Plato fan. Got to respect what Andy Rouse did. You know, if you're going back to his, but the other one next to Plato that I really, really do love is John Cleland. Yeah, I think as well as on the track, he was a bit like Plato. He is fantastic on the mic. He
was very similar to Plato.
Yeah,
very similar, and everybody loved Cleland. When you went to the circuits, you could, everybody was cheering him, and you could just hear people talking. It was Cleland. When he maybe get past someone, everyone would be cheering. And it's exactly the same with Jason Plato.
Yeah,
you know, they've got the same kind of characters, haven't they? And yeah. I always like. I mean, see, my little boy loves because he likes watching some of the old stuff on YouTube and some of the DVDs we've got, and he's become obsessed with that 1992 race. He's watched it back a few times.
Really? Okay, cool.
So at the time, I thought John Cleland was going to be there, so he was really excited about meeting John Cleland. We were looking all around the pits everywhere. I said, it must be here somewhere. Then finally, I went on my phone and saw that they posted they couldn't make it. So.
That's it. He was definitely meant to be there, wasn't he? Yeah. He said something had come up. He actually posted, so he couldn't be. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, like I say, I've met him before and back in the day, and I was quite lucky actually, because in 2014 the Super Tour was raced at Alton Park as a support race to the current touring cars, which was amazing. So I had kind of seen some of them before, and John Cleland was racing in the Vectra that day, and Patrick Watts was racing in the Peugeot 406. So I'd met him again since the 90s, but my son was gutted. So we watch this space. We may end up going back to Brands Hatch next year as well. So
we may get him on this show. I was going to say
that's
that as
it.
well.
That would be good. Yeah.
These are the kind of guys that I would absolutely love to talk to, for this show. And it's the guy. As much as I'd love to talk to any of the guys that are on the track today, it's I'm a history freak. When I get into something, I really do delve into the history of it. So
yeah, well, I think that's something we want to do, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah.
We want to try and, I mean, any drivers out there that may be listening that come across this, ex-drivers, whether you've done half a season, a few races, even a crew member maybe that was around the paddock for a few years, from team to team or whatever, must have some stories to tell. Anybody that wants to come on and talk touring cars, get in touch with us. And
absolutely. No subject is too small, no story too
no.
daft.
Everyone's got story. Everyone's got stories to tell.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot before we move on and start talking about what's going on this weekend. You mentioned some of your favourites there. That you grew up watching Rickard Rydell, Steve Soper, and that. So one driver, one car. Throughout all of the history that you've loved of the BTCC, could be even current, they don't have had to have gone together. It doesn't have to be a car and a driver that have gone together before. What would your dream kind of pairing be if you look back and you think, he's my favorite driver, or she? They're my favorite.
I know who my favorite driver is.
What would the car be?
Without a doubt.
Cool.
And it's Colin Turkington.
Okay, cool.
Been a Turkington fan for far too long now. It's actually quite scary because my son loves Colin Turkington as well. He's his favourite driver, and he looks at the photos and watches some of these old footage, and you think, Christ, that this meeting that we watched a couple of weeks ago from the 2009 season when he won it, and you're thinking, God, that's like 8 years before you were born. It's a long time, really. And Colin's not that old, really. I mean, he's younger than me. And he's been in it for such a long time. And I loved Rickard. I've not loved Rickard Rydell. He was my favourite initially. James Thompson, and Dave Pinkney was quite random. Was a real favourite of mine. Look, we met him in the late 90s. When he was on the support package, and just as a youngster, the name Pinkney, it was quite you'd lean to that name. And I knew he'd been in touring cars, and again, one of the nicest, probably the nicest guy that I've met in a touring car paddock over my time is Dave Pinkney. Just a top bloke. Showed what he could do in 2006 when he came into it in that Honda Integra, and Colin Turkington. But Turkington would definitely, of all the years I've been watching it, he's my number one driver.
What amazes me about Colin Turkington, I've been kind of delving into. I know you've listened to you posted about the episode that I did with Alex Burnham last year about theoretically who is the greatest BTCC driver of all time. I absolutely, this is one of my favorite subjects to delve into, and I'm writing about it at the moment as well on a bit of a sort of multi-week article feature. Colin Turkington, he's up there. He's got the record with Andy Rouse for number of championship wins. I think it's the fact when you look at what he's achieved, he's still doing it. That's what's fascinating.
That's it.
He's setting these records with a guy, obviously, who I think it was like 90. I can't remember what year it was. 94, maybe. I can't remember when Andy.
94. He left. He retired.
Yeah. So that's nearly 30 years ago.
I mean, when did Andy Rouse come into it? Because he won a couple in the 70s, didn't he? So he must have been in it for a similar, in terms of years, he must have been in it for a similar period.
You kind of forget that, I think. Yeah, because he won it. I think it was 1975. He won his.
Yeah, didn't he win it back to back?
Did he have 4 championships? Didn't he? I think did he win that one, and then he won 3 on the bounce.
He won one in 1983, but see, this has always been my cheeky little thing is. I say that really Colin Turkington's won more championships than anybody, because the 1983 one, and again, as a Steve Soper fan, it irks me that Steve Soper had that championship taken off him.
Oh, of course he did. Yes.
Yeah,
right.
and obviously Andy Rouse then got that, and mean, imagine being a fan going to that meeting and you're seeing Steve Soper lift the trophy and the celebrate. I mean, it probably wouldn't be quite as grand as it is now. And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
4 months later, when nobody knows, you get it stripped in a court.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that. Actually, you're
Yeah,
right.
so technically, Andy did only win 3 on the track,
Yeah.
whereas Colin Turkington's won
you
4. But I
trounced
guess
my
he needs
argument
that extra one now just to sort of end the argument a bit.
there.
So
Does a bit, doesn't he? Yeah.
yeah, well, somebody does, whether it's Ash Sutton or somebody. But yeah,
Yeah. So what would be your, before we move on, then, what would be your ideal car then? So if you had a pick of any of the ones that you've
we're
seen,
going for for colour scheme or just in
just
performance?
whatever gets you misty eyed. What is there a car out there that you look back on and is like, oh, I absolutely love that one above the others.
I've got to say the '97 Renault Laguna, the
The
yellow and
that was a
the
yellow
yellow
one.
and blue. Which Alan Menu dominated, and
Yeah.
I wasn't an Alan Menu fan at all, believe it or not, at the time, because I was a Rydell fan.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those drivers and cars that as time goes by, you think, God, they were good.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen anybody that good in a season.
No, it was pretty.
14 wins he had. What was it? Or 12 wins, I think. And then I think Jason Plato had 2.
Yeah.
Out of 21 or 22 races, to win more than 50% of them was something.
Out of all of the review DVDs that I've got, that I've gone back on recently and watched, I will admit that one probably was the least interesting I found, because it was all just so one-sided. It
was in that regard, but I've always thought that was a really good season, because it was just, if you took Alan Menu out of it, it was so competitive with the rest of the field.
Exactly.
It was so, I mean, there's so many drivers at second place, and were winning races and competing, and there were so many great races that year. But in terms of but Alan Menu would just drive off, and then it was a race between everyone else.
Yeah, you knew where the championship was going pretty much straight off.
Yeah.
But one of my, obviously, Jason Plato fan, I would probably say, he's got to be up there as one of my favorite, drivers of all time. If I was to take two people that I absolutely love and swap them over in terms of what they drove, I would probably pick Jason Plato and John Cleland's Vauxhall Cavalier that he won the championship with in '95.
Yeah, because you're a Vauxhall man, I remember you saying.
I'm a Vauxhall man. Yeah, I was brought up with them. My dad, my uncle, my granddad, all of them had Vauxhalls when I was growing up. It was Cavaliers. They all had Cavaliers. My dad had the same sort of that model of Cavalier at the time, I think, as well, that he won that. So and I'm supporting, not that I know I should be impartial, but at the moment Powermax is sort of my team, I suppose. Aaron Taylor Smith is the guy that I really do look out for, and he's in a Vauxhall, which is even better. So but I do have a soft spot for Jason Plato's MG from 2012, the MG6.
Was that which? Oh yeah, that was the red. Was that the red one? Was it before they went white?
Red, black, and blue.
Yeah, it was nice. Yeah, very nice.
Pretty cool.
Anyway. No, going back with Turkington, I've always thought that they were they've always reminded me very similar. Rickard Rydell and Turkington, very similar sort of driving styles, both sort of quiet blokes as well. Yeah. Rydell used to get sometimes criticised of maybe being a bit too soft and not aggressive on the track, and that was a criticism at Colin Turkington for a while. Both brilliantly fast, brilliant racecraft, but they've always reminded me quite similar, those two as well.
I've always thought with Turkington, and I suppose the ethos with racing for me is like, particularly motor racing, you race to win. And this is what I love with someone like Jason Plato. They made no bones about the fact he's going out there, he wanted to win every one. Turkington's one of the real kind of intelligent ones that knows, he plays percentages, he knows where he can afford to hold back, but he can still technically win. He's one of those really infuriating ones that never always up there winning the races, but he's always up there at the top of the championship. Somehow.
Well, I mean, we've been watching some Croft races over the weekend, and there was a season, I think which one it was now. It must have been 2007, and Jason Plato moved over and let Darren Turner take the win at Croft.
Okay.
And he lost out on the title that season to Giovanardi by 3 points.
Okay.
And he won more races than Giovanardi anyway.
Yeah.
So if he'd won that race, they'd have finished level on points, but Jason would have got the title on race wins. Okay. So in hindsight, you look at things like that and think, why move over and let someone win?
Not being funny, but I know when he was asked to do that with Ivan Muller, I think it was was it the year before? I think Plato won the title. He was asked by the team to let Muller through because they wanted him to win the title. He made such a point. He put his indicators on.
Yeah. But he did it over the line as well. Yeah, he did it over the line as we're coming through. But I think at the time he'd been leading like the all season, and whether he and even Hardy hadn't won anything over here yet. So whether they maybe thought, I've got this title in the bag.
Maybe
early door, mid season. I don't know, but it was a strange one, and it came to bite back really.
Yeah,
he should have won a lot more than 2 for sure, and he was unlucky a few times as well.
He really was. Yeah, I've been watching back again. I got back into it for myself. 2012 was the season. I guess that's why I like his car from that year. Yeah. That was the year that I discovered it for myself again. I made the conscious decision to follow it. And he was so close, and I honestly thought he was going to win. And then seeing Matt Neal and Shedden in the same car, essentially, kind of be placed above him was really, I was as a fan, it was a real annoyance, but that he did.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I've wondered if that's something that maybe held Jason back a bit. Was he was quite political, I think, wasn't he, with being the team leader? And whenever he had a really strong teammate, I think it brought the best out of him. You think he won the title in 2001 when Ivan Muller was his teammate. Yeah. When he came back in, Rob Huff was a fantastic teammate, and Jason was brilliant that season in a brand new car. The following season, he had 2 sort of weak teammates, really. Pickford and Hines didn't really challenge.
No.
Yeah. And then a lot of the time MG with like Andy Neat as a teammate, and whenever a young teammate came along, I just wonder sometimes. You look at Honda, two really competitive guys pushing each other on, and they won a lot of championships, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, see what Plato did when he first came in 97, 98 when he was alongside Menu. I mean, you can't get much better competition. I mean, he was the young pup then, so he really was sort of stamping his mark.
Yeah, well, at the Super Touring event, they spoke to Alan Menu about that on the stage there, and he admitted, he said, I've never said this publicly, but I absolutely hated it when Jason came in and he took pole for the first three times. I absolutely hated it, and it really made me raise my game.
Well, there you go. So he could probably credit that title.
Yeah,
to him. You never know.
I think not just for a teammate pushing you on, but you've got a teammate that's almost as good as you. Well, you're winning races. He's second.
Yeah.
The closest your rival's going to be is third, isn't it? Whereas I think if you've got a weak teammate that's back in the pack, your teammate is constantly, like you think that 2007 season, whenever Jason Plato won, or in 2008, Giovanardi was always right. There was the man behind him.
Yeah.
Whereas Darren Turner was usually some further back or off track.
They're not going to help you out, are they? Not going to do you any favors. No. Right. So let's talk about what's going on at the moment. Then we've had a wander back in time, which is brilliant. I can get lost there. So the season so far, your take on it before we go into what could possibly await us this weekend?
I've enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it. Thought I was a bit concerned after Oulton Park qualifying, which had followed Thruxton, that it was just going to be an Ash Sutton, Napa Ford monopoly. Because I still feel that driver car combination is by far and away the best on the grid.
It really is.
He did everybody a favour, I think, by going through a gap that didn't exist on race day and making it all a bit interesting. But
quite.
Yeah, but no, I think it's been a really good season so far, and I think really lit up. I don't know whether it was just because we were there at the track, but I thought Oulton Park was really good.
I must admit, I was starting to kind of feel a bit like yourself that it was a bit predictable. I mean, Ash Sutton, I mean, you can't seem to do anything wrong until he gets to Oulton Park. Oulton Park just had that excitement with it again. Immediately you had, I mean, Jake Hill, fairly quiet. I would say he's been thereabouts, in the top few places, top 4 places, and that quite consistently. But he hadn't won and then all of a sudden he does what he does, and then he takes two. And Colin Turkington's story at Alton Park was just
that was
classic.
brilliant to see.
Yeah.
That was brilliant to see him cutting through the grid.
Mm.
I mean, I do like Jake Hill as well. I'm a really, really big fan of Jake Hill.
Mm-hmm.
If Colin wasn't going to win it this year, I'd really like to see Jake Hill win it. So I certainly hope the BMWs have a good day at Croft. I'd love to see Colin and Jake both going for victories there. But no, I think it's been a really good season, but I seem to say that every season, really. I'm one of those that I love the Super Touring era. I'll love watching back on it all and this kind of. But I've always very much been for me. It's always been as good as ever.
Yeah.
I've never looked back and thought, oh, it was so much better then. It's poor now. I think the standards are so good, and there seems to be a lot less. Certainly in the top. I mean, there's more cars, so you're going to get more, a few more incidents. But certainly, you look at the top. Sometimes you're looking at who's finishing like 15th and 14th, and there's really good drivers there struggling to get into the top 10. Last few years, Matt Neal and Jason Plato were struggling to get into the top 10. It's really competitive, and there's a really high standard, and there's so many drivers on the grid who have either been champions, or you look at and think he's in the right car, he's a potential champion. Jake Hill, Josh Cook. Yeah, there's Josh, so many.
It's John. Yeah, I mean, I really feel for that. Josh Cook should be doing more, and you can really sense. I got a sense at Thruxton when you could hear him do his sort of pit interviews and that after. He's really not loving the car this year.
No,
he's not happy with it. He's really just sounds really just down. Something may inject, and they may have been able to do something with it during this break. He's got Jade back now as well, which you never know. It's his body's back. It could help. Don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. But no, I mean it's all nicely set up in it now for the rest of the season. I think with Ash having that little mishap, I want to see Dan Camish do a bit more.
He started off so well.
Yeah, he struggled by his own admission last season, and I thought this is the season he'll push on. And it looked like it at Brands Hatch. And whilst I still thought Ash Sutton was the man, after Brands Hatch, I was thinking, could Camish here have pulled a bit of a number on everyone? Everybody's looking that way, and Dan Camish does a thanks very much and goes through. But it hasn't really happened, has it? Since then, he's kind of been he's kind of been threatening all the time. He's kind of been doing a bit of a Turkington, hasn't he? He's been up at the sharp end, and you're just thinking, right, go for it, and maybe it could be his weekend. But you're looking at it. I think the top two BMW drivers are in it. I think Sutton's in it, the favourite. Ingram's in it, and I still think Dan Camish has a chance. You've got 5 drivers there.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I calculated this morning, the top 4 are separated by about 35 points.
Yeah.
Ash Sutton had a comfortable lead until Alton Park, and now it's only 6. Again, everyone's had the same break. Everyone's had the same opportunities now to get ready for the restart this weekend. Who's gonna? It's all down to who makes the most of those early moments. Qualifying is obviously going to play a big part. You get positioned right for that first race and you keep it safe, you pretty much wrapped up maybe the second race as well.
Yeah.
It's just who can do that. Predictions wise, who do you think will have pole? How long's a bit of string?
I think Turkington or Hill.
Okay, so we're going for a BMW.
Yeah, it's always been a rear wheel drive circuit, and predominantly that's always been BMW. But then when Subaru came in with their rear wheel drive, they dominated, didn't they? They were actually ahead of the BMWs that year.
Right.
Turkington and Sutton had some joy there, and I think Plato had a couple of runners up spots, I think. Right. So it's always been a rear wheel drive circuit. So we've got to look. If anybody can upset that, it's got to be Ash Sutton. And if Ash comes out of Croft and he's maybe had a couple of wins, or he's really took home more points than the BMWs, then that says a lot for that car.
Yeah.
But I've got to look. got to look at Turkington and Hill. So as much as I'd love to see Colin get another 2 wins as the king of Croft, I think Jake Hill's driving style is better suited to that BMW now. With this at the stage that it's at, with someone who just wrings its neck a bit more. He's a bit more in the Ash Sutton mould, isn't he?
Yeah.
And I think that maybe suits the BMW more, but having the wheels driven off it, and then
you've got youth on his side there. I suppose Colin, he's been around the block a lot of times. You know, he probably knows how to play it safer than
he knows the score, and he's going to be there or thereabouts. He's going to be there or thereabouts, 100%. But yeah, and I hope it's another. I hope it's what usually happens. Colin wins the first 2 races. But top 6 in the third race. That'd be a fantastic weekend, dream weekend.
Yeah.
And just see Jake Hill. Jake Hill's on a roll at the moment, isn't he? Those 2. I mean, we spoke to his dad at Brands Hatch, and said, you know, we were at Alton Park, and Jake had the weekend of his life, 2 wins and a second. We've gone to Brands Hatch Super Tour, and he's won all 4 races.
Yeah.
So if he wins 2 races at Croft, you've got to get us to every round for the rest of the season.
Right.
And we were at Alton Park in 2019 when he won his first touring car race, albeit he had it stripped off him a bit later on. But yeah, we seem to be we seem to be we seem to be a little bit of a lucky magnet for Jake, I think. So
there you go. So you're there at Croft this weekend.
Yeah. Then what's the next meeting? Is it Knockhill after that?
I think so.
I think it is. Yeah, which we definitely won't be. So if he has a shocker, if he does well at Croft and has a shocker at Knockhill, it's got to be us.
There you go. So if he gets to the end of the season and it's like it's all hinging on Brands Hatch, you've got to be there, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's a good excuse, isn't it, to be down there?
But as a Colin Turkins fan, you never know. It could be one of those. It could have put on a bit of a Dick Dastardly role and. Undo the nuts on the whales or something.
That would be hilarious. Well, in one sense, but not another, I suppose.
Yeah.
We'll mention a couple of other things that have happened during the break. Again, Team Hard. They for me, I feel they're a team that should be doing more. They've had the most activity in terms of a shake-up. For one reason or another, they're going in with 50% different team this weekend. Michael Crease back on the grid, and Darryl De Leon, who I didn't know who he was until I saw his name pop up at the Goodyear tyre test.
Yeah.
And looking back on it now, you know why he was there, I suppose. But he was quite impressive by all accounts there. And Michael Crease as well. I mean, we know what he can do, and the fans always rally around him. Do you see their fortunes sort of changing a little bit, maybe with them there?
Maybe. I mean, you can't really expect Darryl De Leon to do too much with no matter how good a driver he is. I mean, we've seen Tom Chilton and Aidan Moffat come in over the years as sort of a similar age, and they've both proved themselves as good drivers and won races. But it still takes
time, though,
at least a year or two to really get up to speed. So it's just a learning curve. For him. Michael Crease, on the other hand, is a slightly older, slightly more experienced, and I'd love to see him get a result. I'm a little bit. See, after my son was born, I watched it from afar, and sometimes we'd miss the meetings. It wasn't really till probably sort of 2021 we started following it close again, and he was out of it then, or in for the odd weekend. So kind of missed the season when he had his full campaign. So really looking forward to meeting him, and because he's such a popular guy and seems like such a likable fella as well. So
I was stood behind him in the queue for the bar at Thruxton.
Right.
I was already talking to someone, and I just didn't have the guts to kind of poke my head in, unfortunately. But it was there. So he's very well liked there. Both times I've been at Thruxton, he's been there, and he's been sort of there in the evening entertainment, sort of floating around. So really, really, it's good to see him back, and it'd be good to see if he can do something. Dan Lloyd needs a mention as well, because again, only when I was looking at it this morning, realised he did the double last year at Croft. I know he's in a different car, different team.
Yeah.
You know, in with a shot, or is there too much
He's won
of
a
a
few
difference?
times. Yeah, he's won a few times at Croft, hasn't he? Took his first ever win there as well. A couple of years ago, I think, with the BTCC racing. When he was with them, he's still with them, isn't he?
He's with Team Hard this season.
Is he? Ah, of course, yeah. So he's won there. So he obviously another driver that seems to like Croft. I just can't see that anything but BMW wins in the first two races. The third one, anything can happen. You get reverse grid. There's so many good drivers on the grid and drivers who have won there. You know, and you know, Dan Lloyd's another one we're talking about. There's so many. You can be a really top driver and you're struggling to get in the top 10 all the time. But you know, the field is just so competitive, and you know. But I'd like to see Dan Lloyd win. I'd like to see Dan Lloyd. He's another good driver. He's been out for a while now, and
he was. I was rooting for him last year.
He's another driver. Every year, I think, because Jake Hill, I didn't realise that until we've been this rainy weekend. Me and my son just revisited a load of Croft classics. And I didn't realise how long Jake Hill had actually been in the championship for. You know, it was 10 years ago he made his debut in it at Croft.
Right.
And then he came in it full time. I think 2016. So he's been in it for quite a while. But it took him a good few years to get to the stage where he's been at the last couple of years of sort of winning races regularly and getting on the top the podium. And I'm kind of waiting for Dan Lloyd to do something similar every year, and because he's got the capabilities, and it's a good shout for a race 3 win. I think Dan Lloyd,
if it gets placed right. I mean, I would love to see. Still looking forward to seeing Aaron Taylor-Smith return to the podium, really, for selfish reasons. And it's a perfect. I think he's definitely, I think, got a better fit this year than he had with the Cupra last year. He just wasn't really getting the results. And I think that team is one of the most improved teams that I've seen this year as a whole.
Yeah.
It would be great to see. He came second. If we're talking about the importance of the tyre test, which some people don't think it's really that important, but he came second to Tom Ingram. He's doing something. I think it's people do discount that tyre test, but I think there would have been teams taking it fairly seriously because they've not raced on that track for over 20 years either. Exactly. Yeah.
There's no testing between now and then. That was a chance for a lot of those teams and drivers to really crack that circuit in terms of set up for the race weekend and things like that, and qualifying. So I think there would have been a few taking it fairly seriously, or should have been, because it's not a circuit where they can look at last year's data, is it, and draw from.
That is it, and that's what was quite exciting about.
Yeah, I know you regularly hear drivers talking about that, don't you? You know, when they come in with a new car, we haven't got data to go from last season, so and that's the same there. So I think there would have been teams taking that fairly seriously to get that sort of stuff. So but no, let's
see then. Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you. I think the BMW is definitely going to be up there. If they're not, it's going to be a Napa.
And there's enough of them, isn't there? Let's be honest.
And that's it. When you look at Napa and BMW, you can see why they are up there, because they've got enough chances. Yeah, there may only be a couple of front runners within each team, but they're all capable of being up there. You know,
Stephen Jelly, he's had some good results at Croft over the years. His first podium was there. And remember Nick Foster was in it for a few years. Didn't really get great results, but every year he went to Croft, he was fantastic. He looked a totally different driver, and it just really does suit the BMW. So it's hard to look past them. But I just think with the likes of Ash Sutton and Tom Ingram around, if anybody can split them and get up there and unsettle them a bit, it's got to be those two guys.
Yeah. Well, we're certainly in for, it's going to be exciting anyway, because we've been waiting.
Yeah.
It seems half of our life for this to kick back in this year.
Yeah.
So when we reconvene, and it's wet as well. Yeah, it's like it's they meant to have like one wet day, one dry day. Someone said they're going to have a bit of everything.
It's been changing, because we're going and camping. So whilst I don't mind wet races, I mean, I went to Croft in 2008, and So I think it's the best touring car race I've ever been to.
Right.
When Matt Jackson stormed through the grid and nearly won it on the line, finished side by side with Turkington
Right.
for the win. So I don't mind a wet race. It's more the Saturday and the camping that I want it to
Yeah.
be dry. But so I've been keeping my eye on the weather updates, and it's just changing all the time. At one point, it was down for rain all weekend. I looked earlier in the week, and it was down for hardly any rain. I haven't checked it in the last couple of days. So
No point. It's got to be different.
hopefully it stays dry all weekend, and then it pours down from about 10 o'clock Sunday onwards, and that'll be
Makes it quite
perfect weekend. Yeah.
We've seen the chaos that could ensue. I think it was at Donington, wasn't it, at the beginning of the season?
Yeah.
With that race where
Brilliant race.
Nick Hamilton placed better than he has
Tom
before.
Chilton winning, and the drivers are right up there as well at one point, weren't they?
Yeah, it must be such a nightmare to drive it, but it's fantastic for us who are watching it. So cool. Well, when we reconvene in a couple of weeks, we can kind of dissect it, and we can see if our predictions are ringing true. So cool. Before we wrap it up, we've got to say a massive thank you as well. It's a big shout out to Kevin Whitewood of the British Touring Car Chat Facebook group. I would say probably the closest thing there is to an official BTCC fan group on there. I mean, it's so well supported. And I've been a member of it for a while, and it's always sort of my go-to for the news and reviews and all that. So Kevin, thank you for your group, and any all support that can flood our way from anyone who is listening.
Yeah, well,
to this.
I've been on other groups. Yeah, I've been on other groups, and sometimes a bit too much nonsense going on, and I don't stick around. That's a group that I stick around on, and really grateful to Kevin, because he allowed us to sort of advertise that we were putting this podcast together and relaunching it, and wasn't really, he didn't have to really to help us out, and he let that he put that post through. We've had a really good feedback from him, doing that, and it's really appreciate your support there, Kevin, and most of the listeners and viewers to this will be members of that group anyway. But hopefully over the as the time goes by, we can really get our heads together and repay him for that support, really.
Absolutely. And anyone who is watching or listening to this who's not a fan, not a member of that group, why are you not? Get on Facebook and get yourself part of it, because it's a fantastic community.
BTCC, British Touring Car Chat.
It's probably the first one that comes up whenever you search for it. I know it was for me. So, Lee, it's been great, mate. So happy that we are doing this. I know we've been talking about it now for a good few weeks. It's so good to get our wheels on the road, as it were.
And I suppose before we finish, Chris, I suppose if for people listening or watching, if you can get in touch, YouTube is probably the best way, is it? Or the Facebook page?
They can do it. So you can contact us through the Facebook page. We've got a YouTube channel now, like I said at the top of the show. You can contact us through that. We do actually now have an email address, if that's your bag, as well. So reversegridbtccpod@gmail.com. Yeah.
And any feedback, but also we're hoping, aren't we, over the course of time to go back and revisit either certain seasons, races, drivers, cars, stories of any period in the British touring car history. If there's a subject that you want to get involved in, or you want us to discuss, you want to hear about, give us an idea, a suggestion, anything in the comments, and we'll get onto it.
Absolutely, yeah. We want this to be a real kind of two-way. I've got to stop with these kind of road-like cliches here, but we want it to be a two-way street. This is how we're going to grow this, is support and communication,
interaction, everything.
That's what I was aiming for there. So by all means, everyone, please do get in touch and let us know. It's going to be early days. You may some weeks it'll probably just be the two of us kind of discussing whatever
Catching
it
up.
is that we can think of, which will be great as well. They've like I said at the top, there's always something that we can pull out from BTCC. It's an ever-changing beast. So
If I start talking about touring cars, believe me, we could be here all night. So
and
people start throwing in ideas and like-minded individuals who want to come on and do this. Brilliant. Get on board.
Absolutely. So there we go. That's our first official episode. Thank you so much for listening and watching, everyone. Get in touch. And Lee, I'll see you in a couple of weeks, mate.
Super.
And, enjoy Croft. Stay dry where you can.
We will, mate.
But,
we've already invested in a nice big golfing umbrella, so we're prepared.
There you go. I look forward to hearing about it, mate. But join us again in a couple of weeks where we'll find out what's going on, what's coming up in the world of BTCC. Keep it here.
See you now.
If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, share, and hit the subscribe button. Also follow us on Facebook to keep updated about all future shows.